Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Testing Psychologist podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jeremy Sharp, licensed psychologist, group practice owner, and private practice coach. Many of y'all know that I have been using therapy notes as our practice EHR for over 10 years now. I've looked at others, and I just keep coming back to therapy notes because they do it all. If you're interested in an EHR for your practice, you can get 2 free months of therapy notes by going to thetestingpsychologist.com/therapy notes and enter the code TESTING. This episode is brought to you by PAR. PAR offers the Spectra Indices of Psychopathology, a hierarchical, dimensional look at adult psychopathology. The Spectra is available for paper and pencil assessment or administration and scoring via PAR iConnect. Learn more at parinc.com/spectra. That's SPECTRA. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited to have a returned set of guests today. If you are new to the podcast, you are in for a treat. If you have been listening for a long time, then you know how fantastic these guests are. I've got Rachel and Steph from the Learn Smarter podcast back to talk with me about AI in learning. So, if you don't know them, Rachel is a board-certified member of the Association of Educational Therapists and the owner of Kapp Educational Therapy Group in Beverly Hills, California. Fancy. She's a co-founder and co-host of the Learn Smarter podcast. She grew up in LA and had a wonderful public school experience in LA United School District, then went on to attend UC Berkeley. She found educational therapy after teaching preschool for 7 years and is now obsessed with helping struggling learners thrive in school. Stephanie Pitts is a board-certified educational therapist and the owner of My Ed Therapist, a group practice in Redondo Beach, as well as a co-founder and co-host of the Learn Smarter podcast. Known as the Game Whisperer, with a collection of over 200 games she uses with her clients, Stephanie expertly weaves fun and play into her work. She's an LA native and received her BA in sociology from USC and a master's degree in education from Pepperdine University. She completed her certificate in educational therapy at CSUN and has been trained as an academic coach. In her free time, Stephanie enjoys spending time with her 2 dachshunds, traveling, and spending time with friends. All right. So Rachel and Steph are back. We're talking about AI in educational therapy and learning. Now, this is super interesting. I mean, we're talking about AI a lot in the assessment world, and I thought it would be great to bring Rachel and Steph on because they are working with students on the front lines day in and day out, helping them do their best. And I know that AI has made its way into that environment as well. So here are just a few things that we discuss during the episode. We talk about some of the most common applications of AI for school-age kids. We talk about school attitudes toward the adoption of AI. We talk about parent attitudes toward AI, and we have a discussion about just the philosophical views on AI in the sense of, whether it's ultimately a good or bad thing for learners. And I think you'll find that to be an interesting discussion. Now, as usual, we talk about a lot of other things, and it's always a dynamic and engaging conversation with Rachel and Steph. So I am happy to bring you this conversation about AI in learning. Rachel and Steph, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, that was good.
I tried to do it in sync, but it didn't work. I almost.
That was pretty good.
We did all right.
Yeah. You did do all right. Yeah. You've had some practice. So I think this is y'all's, maybe 4th time on the podcast. You are definitely getting up there in terms of frequent flyers here on the Testing Psychologist.
I love it. We've done it. You've been on ours several times as well. Go ahead,
yeah. I was gonna say, like, what happens when we get like the frequent flyer, like,
I want to get like a 5 timers jacket, like on SNL.
Yeah.
Like, Jeremy, you're gonna have to send us some swag or something.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
totally
Yep.
what I want. That's awesome.
Yep. Jackets it is. Yes.
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, I'm excited to talk with y'all. I mean, we're talking about AI and how y'all are seeing AI in your world and your work with students and homework and ed therapy. So there's so much to talk about here. I think everybody's super excited and maybe scared of AI. And I'm just enjoying having conversations with folks in different worlds about what this looks like and how people are using it. So thanks for coming on and being willing to do it. Yes.
Yeah.
Always.
Yes. So I'm going to start with like a big philosophical question that we'll just we'll see where it sends us. But generally speaking, how do y'all feel about the use of AI in the work that you do with the kids? Like, do you feel like it's a tool that all kids should be learning how to use? Or are you more in the camp of, no, this is like cheating, we need to really limit it and, clamp down a little bit, or some other perspective that I haven't thought of?
I think so. This is Rachel talking. I look at it as I look at a lot of technology, which is that it's a tool. It's not going away. And so it's our responsibility to teach the learners that we get to work with how to use it ethically, how to use it responsibly, and to use it to their advantage, especially the populations that we work with. They need the sort of shortcuts to get to the end result. But, AI isn't perfect and you can't always trust it completely. And a lot of the learners that we work with don't know that about it because it's not a perfect technology yet. And so I'm down for going down that path with learners who are using it in a morally responsible, meaningful way. Steph, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree because it is a tool. I mean, it's just the Google on steroids, right? Like how long has anybody been using Google to find out the answers?
Yeah.
We have. And so it's definitely, I agree, it's definitely about how to use it responsibly, but how to use it in a way that's going to work for you, because it's not always about having it just write an essay for you. That's not, ethically not into that, but getting some of the information that you want to include in your essay is much easier than flipping through a book. And, the learners that we work with, if they're looking for a quote, they could be looking for hours and just lose track of time. And then they're not getting anything productive done. So I don't think the skill of finding a quote, I'm just using that as an example, is really something that we need to hone in on, having them practice so much as like, what are they going to do with the information? And that's more of how I treat it.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally
remember,
agree.
I don't mean to interrupt, Jeremy, but just because it's an available option, you still have to ask it something. And so the learners that we work with don't always know what to ask.
Yes.
So it's not something that is necessarily what I'm seeing right now. It isn't their first go-to.
No.
Yeah.
See, that's interesting.
And they'll ask full questions, like several sentence long questions sometimes. And it gets a little muddled, and because they don't really know what to ask or how to ask it. And so that is definitely something that I'm seeing and like trying to work on with them.
And Steph, we've talked about this for years that like just because Google, they don't know what to Google either. You can say Google it, but they don't know what to
or
type
search it
in,
up. We're not cool.
right. Yeah.
Search it up.
Yeah.
Search it up. Yeah. Side note, I feel like that phrase "search it up" has become popular over the last like 6 months. I feel like my daughter picked it up somehow, and like her friends are like, it's no longer like Google it or
no, it's not.
Look it or search. It's search it up.
I am feeling so old because that is the first time I've heard it. It's the first time I've ever heard you say it. I've never heard it before. Yeah. Or maybe it's just the first time that like we're having a conversation about the phrase.
Yeah, no, it's been probably a good year or two at least.
Okay.
Of the kids correcting
right.
me when I say Google it, and they say search it up. And I went, oh.
Okay. All right. Let's meet them where they're at. All right, fine.
Yeah. I got to be with the lingo, guys. Got to be with the lingo.
Oh my gosh. It's a full-time job.
Yeah, it really, I can't. I can't with the Riz. I can't with the Riz. Like that's another
Riz.
thing. Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
We could do a whole podcast.
We could do a whole podcast on
anyway,
language.
moving on.
Yeah.
Language and language. Yeah. No, you're right though. I was listening to a podcast the other day that was talking about how Googling in itself or searching it up in itself is a skill. And we take that for granted, I think, or I do anyway, that people just know how to successfully Google. And if you don't have that down, then using AI is going to be even tougher because the prompts and the language, are a little more nuanced and complicated.
Yeah.
So y'all are finding, it sounds like, that kids are, some kids, not all, sounds like, are working with it, using it, but it's still imperfect. Like you're still finding a lot of challenges with it. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's just like certain things that as we are digging more into AI, like we are learning about it as well. So let's say that you go into ChatGPT to ask a question and you want to find peer-reviewed articles on a certain topic. ChatGPT will just make up citations. And so, but if learners don't know that, no, you can't get it to authentically search, but you have to push it to be like, no, I don't want an idea of what a peer-reviewed article could be. I want an actual legitimate one. And it can discover that for you, but like you have to know
there's a lot of follow-up questions in it. Yeah, and there's a lot of follow-up questions that you need to ask to get it to what you really want it to be. I think there's multiple steps in using ChatGPT, for instance. If you're trying to get to an answer, like it's not a one-stop shop.
Right. How are you seeing students use it primarily? Those who seem to be into it, like what are they coming to you with? Like how's that coming up in the work that y'all do?
I have a kid who uses it for when he's reading and he needs to do notes on the reading, but it is so much reading and so time consuming to stop, go. He'll do it after and pull up the main points of the reading. And then he'll make the notes off of that. So he's using it that way and it works very successfully for him and he's much faster.
And I mean, I don't see how that's any different than us telling a learner, go find the summary of something so you know what you're about to read, right?
I mean, like, it's literally like Cliff's Notes back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I see learners going to it to ask for clarification on a topic that maybe they don't understand, helping them to maybe interpret prompts that are difficult, because that's one of the things that we talk about a lot is that, especially as they're in their later years of school, in middle school and high school and college, you'll get a prompt, but there's no question. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking, what am I supposed to answer? But if there's not a question, it's
very confusing. Yeah.
It's very confusing. How do I start? And we teach them in our practices, excuse me, how to break it down, how to interpret a prompt. But you can also bring it into ChatGPT and have it derive its own questions from it. And by simply saying, can you turn this into answerable questions for me? And that, to me, is also ethically and responsible way of using it.
Absolutely.
Can you give me an example? I'm not sure if I know exactly what you're talking about, like using it to break down a prompt.
Okay.
Oh, this is a goodie.
So we've done lots of episodes on it, but let me give you an example. So you have a learner who's in 11th grade. They're writing on Madam Butterfly. They're reading that as a class. And the teacher will give, it's a full page prompt, and there will be, okay, this is what the topic should be. And it's just a bunch of sentences, just explaining what you should think about writing about. And then it's a third of the page on formatting, and then a rubric at the bottom. And because there's no, like, what does the main character of Madam, like, there's no what, who, what, when, where, why, or how statement or question, these learners that we work with will look at this. First of all, it's overwhelming to them because it's all signals based. There's a lot of language on the page, and they're feeling burdened already with having to retain information from the book that they may or may not have read, if we're being honest. And now they're being asked to respond to it. It's very overwhelming and complicated. So what we teach learners to do is, okay, particularly in that initial paragraph where it's just a description of what they want to write about, we take each sentence and we turn it into a question. And what that does is it allows them to go back and really understand what the teacher is wanting from them on the assignment. And it guides them, it gives them some guideposts to at least get started down the path. And that is absolutely a skill that all learners have to learn, because that's how learners miss component parts of what's being asked of them oftentimes. Or they'll get bogged down. A lot of the learners that we'll work with will immediately focus on the structure and format. So let's say that they're offered the opportunity,
because that's the clear part.
That's clear.
That's
right.
Yeah.
So let's say you're offered the opportunity, you can either write an essay or do slides, like PowerPoint or Google Slides. A lot of the learners that we work with, they'll make the slides, they'll make it look pretty, they'll format it, but they have no content prepared. Because like Steph said, that's the part that's clear. So what AI can come in and do is help clarify a lot of this stuff. And sometimes we're not knocking the teachers. Sometimes the teachers are trying to leave it open-ended because they want the learners to be able to go where they want. But for learners that we work with who struggle with executive functioning skills challenges or have reading disorders or writing disorders, it's very complicated. They don't want that.
Or autism
or autism or ADHD or auditory processing, whatever is going on. They don't like open-ended.
Yep.
And so we can use ChatGPT to narrow things down for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I hadn't thought of that as a use, but that totally makes sense. Especially, those kids with executive functioning concerns and struggle with ambiguity in those open-ended questions.
Yeah. And even sometimes I've done it with kids where we've talked about how to format, like what paragraphs would cover what. We've used ChatGPT to like talk about that, because when they have a little bit more direction and it's a little more clear, it becomes easier. And they can follow directions if they understand what's being asked of them. And so that's where it really can be such a useful tool for them. And it's, just seeing them like learn how to problem solve is what we're teaching them, how we're teaching them to be autonomous, right? How to hold themselves up. So what can you use? What do you do when you don't know what to do? And that's a great tool to use.
That's a great point. Yeah. I know there are folks out there, maybe educational purists of a sort, who'd be like, no, that's cheating. It's sort of like the other side. Like you could, you got to do all this on your own. But I totally agree. Like it is a tool to leverage the skills that you have and kind of play to your strengths,
it's like wearing glasses, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've recently had to start wearing glasses all the time, and this is a new thing for me, but it's not like I'm cheating with my eyes. I'm just, using a tool.
Right. And that overlaps with the way that I have used it a little bit myself, even is, if I'm trying to, like, for me, it's a lot easier to edit than to create. If that makes sense. I think that's true for a lot of folks.
Have you met Steph?
Let's talk about, So in just a little side note, in grad school where Rachel and I met, we'd have assignments and I would not know where to start, like how to make it look or what the formatting or things like that. I would struggle with that tremendously. Rachel, on the other hand, that is her strong suit, and she'll bust something out in 2.5 seconds, and then she'll say, "Here, Steph, do it like this." And then I would go, "Oh, okay." And then I would do my own.
By the way, this
Sure.
still happens as we are developing our own podcast episodes. I'm the one sort of structuring it. And I'm like, okay, this is when we're going to talk about each component part. And then Steph will go in and like fill in the gaps a little bit. But yeah, Steph really taught me that particular skill of creating is not for everybody. And so that's why we're such good collaborators. Because we each bring different, because let me be honest, I'm not interested in the nitty gritty a lot of the time. So like,
Totally.
it works for us. But yeah, so you're using it to formulate. How are you using it?
Yeah, I do a lot of like create an outline, so I have to do a 2-hour presentation on
100%
autism assessment in kids for whatever audience. So the trick, we're like getting into the weeds with AI. But the trick is like, hey, pretend you're a psychologist doing this speech. You're gonna, whatever, write this thing
in front of this amount of people, and
and then I'll, do the thing like ask me 10 questions to help you understand, what this should be about, and get more info. So it like asks me questions, I give it the answers, and then it's like create an outline for a 2-hour presentation. And then once I have that outline, then I can go in and be like, I don't like this, or I do like this.
Totally.
Give something to bump off of, and then kind of fill in all the details.
It's great for creating a framework as well. If you know how you think about something, but you want to give it like a snazzy ABC framework or pop framework or whatever, it's really good at coming up with ideas for that as well. Yeah, it's a great use of it. It's one of the ideas that it's great for generating outlines, but you have to know what to feed it. You have to know what information it sort of needs in order for it to be meaningful to you. And then you have to have that critical piece where it's not cheating, I feel like, is the piece afterwards where you're throwing out what doesn't work and you're bringing in what does, and it's just idea generation.
Yeah.
Right. So y'all work with a lot of kids. I mean, kids and teens, right? I'm just curious, like you said, some kids are using it, most are not. What is the general vibe with AI for kids in y'all's experience? Like, how are they looking at it and thinking about it? Let's take a break to hear from a featured partner. Y'all know that I love Therapy Notes, but I am not the only one. They have a 4.9 out of 5-star rating on Trustpilot.com and Google, which makes them the #1 rated electronic health record system available for mental health folks today. They make billing, scheduling, note-taking, and telehealth all incredibly easy. They also offer custom forms that you can send through the portal. For all the prescribers out there, Therapy Notes is proudly offering e-prescribe as well. And maybe the most important thing for me is that they have live telephone support 7 days a week, so you can actually talk to a real person in a timely manner. If you're trying to switch from another EHR, the transition is incredibly easy. They'll import your demographic data free of charge, so you can get going right away. So if you're curious, or you want to switch, or you need a new EHR, try Therapy Notes for 2 months, absolutely free. You can go to thetestingpsychologist.com/therapy notes and enter the code TESTING. Again, totally free, no strings attached. Check it out and see why everyone is switching to Therapy Notes. The Spectra Indices of Psychopathology provides a hierarchical, dimensional look at adult psychopathology. Decades of research into psychiatric disorders have shown that most diagnoses can be integrated into a few broad dimensions. The Spectra measures 12 clinically important constructs of depression, anxiety, social anxiety, PTSD, alcohol problems, severe aggression, antisocial behavior, drug problems, psychosis, paranoid ideation, manic activation, and grandiose ideation. That's a lot. It organizes them into 3 higher order psychopathology spectra of internalizing, externalizing, and reality impairing. The spectra is available for paper and pencil assessment or administration and scoring via PARI Connect. You can learn more at parinc.com/spectra. All right, let's get back to the podcast.
I think it depends on the age.
I agree. I also think it depends on how strict and clear
The school
their
is.
school is. There are a lot of schools that we work with locally to us who are, that honor code is so clear, and there's so much fear about overstepping and not living within the honor code because it is so emphasized. So sometimes there's reluctance to engage with it.
Very much.
And so,
I could see that.
So sometimes,
and some and also some schools that provide computers, it's blocked.
Okay.
So sometimes we use my computer.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like I understand why the schools would block it, but that's why I think there has to be a larger conversation about responsible digital citizenship, because just ignoring it, when they go to college, they're not going to have a computer that blocks it. And when they're working in the workforce, they're likely not going to have a computer that's blocked. So if we're creating, entire people, part of that is being a responsible digital citizen and the way you're using it. So I think what I am finding more often than not is a reluctance. And keep in mind, like, the population that we work with is narrow. These are kids who are struggling for some reason, and they want to live within the bounds. And they also, I feel like, want to do what their peers are doing. And they just want to be typical. And I put that in quotes. But their friends aren't talking necessarily about they're not having these conversations with each other.
No, they're not. And I think there's also, even within our own practices, there's some sort of, there's a difference, because most of the kids in your practice go to private school. Most of the kids in my practice do not. And there is a big difference in the honor code, for instance. And consequences are much higher in a private school setting than they are in a public school
We're
setting.
talking about the people that we work with locally. The majority of the clients that we work with nationally are in the public school system. But I was absolutely thinking locally. Yeah. So, it's just, it depends on the situation, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask about that, just what you're seeing in the schools, at least there locally. I mean, I know it's going to differ across the country, but it sounds like there's a pretty good bit of variability in how schools are approaching it too.
Yeah, and I think schools take a while sometimes to figure out how they feel about something. And with tech moving so fast, and let's be honest, sometimes the adults don't know how things are being used, and then there's just one bad apple.
A lot of times it's
for the bunch, but
it's reactionary a lot of times, and I think that they're all just trying to. I mean, I know everybody's just trying to do the best they can, and it doesn't always look the same, and it's not always the right answer, but I do think that I completely agree with, teaching responsibility and teaching how you can use it, because going forward, as it progresses and gets
better,
smarter, it's going to be helpful in a lot of ways where a lot of the population we work with, that is where they really struggle. And so it's, just like when I remember, when people started to record and it would create the notes like straight for them, and that's cheating, and that's, but now, or like doing it, voice to text was cheating, but like now it's not considered cheating anymore. So it's like, it's got to go through its process and its time of like people accepting it.
And it's our job as we're board certified educational therapists. Our job is to make it easier, fundamentally, so that learners can access the information that they need to know and show their knowledge. So that's our job. It's both components. It's helping them receive the information, but also showing off what they know so they can get credit for what they know. And so this is another resource that we should be taking advantage of. It's another way of we always say we're down with the shortcut. If we can do something easier, let's do it in an easier way. And just because it doesn't look like the traditional way that the parent did it, which, this always comes up when parents are like, they should be studying for this class X amount of minutes a week or X amount of minutes a day.
Yeah.
And we're always like, it's not about time spent. It's about that quality of learning that's happening that can happen in a much shorter period of time. So it's just an analogy of it can look different than what we thought and learning should look like.
Yeah, the more that we learn about it and figure out how it can be useful, I really feel like it is democratizing learning quite a bit, right? So it's opening doors for kids who may have gotten stuck on some of these other, skills needed to study or learn or whatever it may be. Like it is a great shortcut to showcase some other skills for kids.
Yeah.
That's the hope. Now, you said something interesting a little bit ago about how these kids are not talking about AI with their peers. So that mirrors my experience, but I would love to talk more about it because, I was telling Steph before we started recording, I have a very soon to be 13-year-old and, he's on Snapchat, like I think a lot of kids are, and they introduced that like Snap AI early on, like a year ago, probably, maybe more. And he like messed with it for a little bit and it was kind of funny, but then he forgot about it. And I haven't heard anything about AI from my, teenager in months. And it sounds like that kind of mirrors y'all's experience too. Like kids are not necessarily talking about it with their friends. It's not a big deal.
That's my experience, is that when I bring it up as an option, I'm like, have you asked AI about it? That they kind of, well, like, how do I do that? They're not exploring it sort of yet. I feel like that's not, unless they're really techie and into that stuff, in which case they're all in and they're showing us how to do it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Or they have used it and it's been so beneficial that they are then talking about how it's helped them tremendously. So I think
have it write a resume for you. I mean, that's that's a big stopgap sometimes for these teens to getting a job, is they don't have anything to put on a resume, except they totally do. They just have to think about it creatively, but that can help,
Yeah. And formatting, right?
Yes.
Yeah. There's so many capabilities of it. I've been using it to summarize articles. Like you can upload a PDF, like a research article, and tell it to summarize key points, main points, stuff like that.
Have you heard of? There's an app called Blinkist. Have you heard of this stuff? Well, Jeremy knows about it, and I haven't used it yet. But my understanding of it is that it basically takes these books and summarizes them. These are the main points you need to know. It's like a 20-minute, I guess, podcast about it. Is that accurate, Jeremy?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it's basically like Cliff's Notes, audio Cliff's Notes for books, but it's pre-AI, like it's been around for, I don't know, 5 or 6, years. Maybe it was using AI. I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of that same thing.
Interesting.
Which I find super helpful. Yeah. With Blinkist, to go down that rabbit hole for a second, I didn't, like, it wasn't detailed enough for me. Like I wanted
You brought, and then you got to read the book.
Like yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Exactly. But that's the cool thing about AI is I can still say, I'll go to it sometimes and say like, hey, summarize this book, like tell me the main points, and it'll do that. And then I'll say, give me more detail on point number 3 and what that actually looks like, or give me an example or whatever. And it can do that. And that's valuable.
It's having a conversation with AI. It's like that's what we need to teach them how to have the conversation with the AI so that they can ask the questions so that they can get the information that they do need.
Steph, it's funny because I'm asking AI to make a resume for you right now, but I'm like, this is only partially accurate. I'm looking at like what it's coming up for you.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's partially accurate.
I like this. A real-time experiment. So how did you do that? What was the prompt for that?
So I put in the prompt, can you make a resume for Stephanie Pitt's last 20 years of professional work experience?
Did it get me?
Yeah, it's you. Has my therapist, it has Learn Smarter podcast. It has...
There's a lot of Stephanie Pitts in the world because I get their emails all the time. So I'm surprised it actually chose me.
No, it did because various schools, it absolutely did. It knows you.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
There you go.
And we're very linked. Our websites both come up. Makes sense.
Well, yeah.
Sure. Anyway, real world experiment.
So speaking of that, yeah, it's great. It's great. It makes me think though too of, I wonder how long it's going to be until this is integrated into computer class, right? Like they're actually teaching kids how to prompt engineer or use AI. It seems like it'd be a valuable skill.
I hope they do.
I hope they do too. Because
like typing was, you know,
I still think typing is something. My famous story about my dad when I was in 8th grade insisted that I take a typing class, and I'm so offended because I was like, I'm not going to be a secretary. I was like very feminist as an 8th grader, and he just thought I was being cute, and he's like, no, you're taking this class. He never insisted on anything. He's kind of laid back about most things, except that and like my bra strap showing. Like he did not like that. It was such a critical skill. I'm so grateful that he pushed it on me. Because one of the reasons I can bust out those grad school assignments so fast is because I type really fast. So, but yeah, I agree. I think it needs to be in. This is what I'm talking about of being responsible digital citizen. We need to be using these things, and then screening for kids who are maybe avoiding the work. But I would argue that the kids who like were nervous are going to write their whole essay on ChatGPT. I actually don't think they will if they have another way of doing it. So, because we come from a fundamental place where we believe that if students can, they will. And if they can't, we have to explore and get curious about why it's not working for them. So I think kids want to meet expectations inherently.
Yeah.
They want to do the right thing. They want to please the adults in their life. They want to please their teachers. They're not looking to skip the line. They just need it to be a little bit easier. And so if this is a way of making it easier, the reason that they would go in and write it to begin with is because something about it is hard for them. So that's just an opportunity for us to get curious and support the different ways that they have to do things that work for them.
I like the way that you frame that. Yeah. If nothing else, it's just a learning experience. It just gives us information about the learner and what they gravitate toward, what's hard for them.
Yeah, because if they truly didn't care, they just wouldn't do it. If they're taking the time to go and put it in and try to turn something in.
Yep.
That says something.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. I love that y'all come from that place. You know, it's sort of like the Ross Green stuff, like the, kids do well when they can.
Yes. Yeah. They do.
Just applied to learning. Yeah. I agree. What about parents? Do parents play any role in this? Have you had to have conversations with parents at all, like in the work that you're doing? Anybody pushing back or like really wanting AI to help in your work with kids?
I think on the whole, the short answer is I've not had a conversation with a parent about.
I have not either.
If I had to guess what the reaction would be, I think it would be a teachable conversation. I don't think they'd be inherently excited because they'd be worried about the cheating aspect of it, and not using. They'd be worried that their learner would not use it as the tool it's intended to be. But no, I haven't had any conversations or pushback. The truth is that parents just want things to be they want their kids to thrive and be happy and safe and have esteem. And so however we sort of help navigate that, we have good clients that we work with for sure in that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes. Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. I would imagine that a lot of parents are in a similar place. Like I feel like I live in this bubble of like everyone is talking about AI and using Chat GPT for everything. And, like my wife and I are super into it, like my business is, but I imagine it's the same as everything else. Like there's a big percentage of the population that probably doesn't care at all and doesn't use
I
it
think there'll be a
on
tipping point.
Regular basis.
Just as there's been a tipping point with everything else. I'm just not sure we're there yet. I don't know, Steph, what do you think?
Yeah. I was just sort of thinking when you were talking about the tipping point of like the smartphone and like all of that, or Facebook.
Jeremy's just an early adopter. That's what we're deciding.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
I absolutely am. Yeah. You got me pegged. Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
It'll become the norm. It'll be, the thing that we all learn how to use, and then it'll get fancier after that. So, sticking with it as it grows, I guess.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm curious. I mean, talking about me being an early adopter, I wonder for you two, how you're relating to it. Like, do you kind of feel a responsibility to know what's going on with AI if your students were to like bring it to you or want to use it? Like, have you put any much energy into kind of learning it and, knowing how to manipulate it or whatnot, just given the work that you do?
Yeah, I think it is a good question. I mean, certainly I'm just looking at my history with Chat GPT. It's certainly, if I look at the majority of things that I've asked for it, a lot of it sometimes is like business related questions, but also, help me find executive functioning games online like this game. I want more examples of games like this. So things like that. In terms of whether or not I feel a responsibility, no, because I'm okay with the learner coming into session and teaching me something too.
Me too.
So and I actually think it's great when they are able to have that moment of showing off a little bit. And that can sometimes like spark my interest and take me down a rabbit hole, or I'll say to Steph, like, so-and-so showed me this, what do you think? And yeah, I'm okay with, I don't feel like I need to have all the answers on a new piece of tech. If they're bringing it in and I could see the potential of it, that's when I get interested and excited about it. But it took months even. I mean, the more you use it, the more you use it. I kind of feel like the quicker it stays top of mind of like, oh, let me just, right?
And I go through phases myself. So, yeah, I agree with you. And I'm learning a lot of things with how some of my older students use it. And I agree with you. I think that's great because they feel good about it and they're excited to show me. And
all about a compensatory strategy.
Yeah, and they're in the weeds a little bit more. So like I get it. So that's I'm always excited when they show me something because then I can use it.
Yeah. That's a good way to think of it. Yeah. Well, let's see. We've talked about a lot of different aspects of this. What have we missed? I mean, anything sort of out of left field, any random, cool, unique aspects of AI and ed therapy, or how you see students using it, feelings around it?
I see it as such a valuable tool for helping our learners share their knowledge and sharing what they know. And I don't know if I have anything sort of out of left field about it. I just feel like we should, as a field of professionals who are working with this population, we should be embracing things that can make our learners' lives easier, better, more productive. And when this is used correctly, that's totally, all those things can be true.
I want to use it more.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're embracing this.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. You're progressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are
Cutting
from
edge.
LA. Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. Born and
Yeah.
raised. Fair enough.
Right. Well, it's funny. I mean, as you're talking, I was just thinking, talking about the tipping point. I wonder if we'll get to the point where this is something that is included in like a 504 plan or something like that, to allow, in schools where it may not be as widespread, to allow students to use it for whatever reason. I don't know, just thinking through all the possibilities.
I think we're going to be seeing more of that. I think we'll be moving in that direction, and it'll be interesting. I don't think it'll be coming from the parents necessarily. I think it'll be coming from the school. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I wonder if that is the tipping point when schools start to embrace it more. It's kind of like having computers in the class.
Yeah, like we've accepted that that's their reality, right? And so I see that happening.
Yeah. Well, this is fun. I mean, you're ready for it? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I appreciate y'all talking through it. I mean, you have such a, I think, unique perspective that is different than ours. We see kids in these, very unique, not unique, kind of circumscribed environments, right, for testing.
Yeah.
But y'all are working with them on the front lines, kind of like day in and day out, and seeing what they're up to, and what they're struggling with.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you talking through AI with me, and maybe in a few months we can talk about how it is impacting your business as well.
There's so much to talk about.
Other side.
There's so much to talk about. It's been very helpful from a business perspective. So I would love to do that.
For sure.
Nice. Well, I'm always grateful to have you guys on. It's great to talk to you, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
We'll get our 5-timers jacket. It'll be great.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, the next time is going to be 5. Got to get that jacket. All right. Awesome.
I love
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Always grateful to have you here. I hope that you take away some information that you can implement in your practice and in your life. Any resources that we mentioned during the episode will be listed in the show notes, so make sure to check those out. If you like what you hear on the podcast, I would be so grateful if you left a review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're a practice owner or aspiring practice owner, I'd invite you to check out the Testing Psychologist mastermind groups. I have mastermind groups at every stage of practice development: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. We have homework, we have accountability, we have support, we have resources. These groups are amazing. We do a lot of work and a lot of connecting. If that sounds interesting to you, you can check out the details at thetestingpsychologist.com/consulting. You can sign up for a pre-group phone call, and we will chat and figure out if a group could be a good fit for you. Thanks so much. The information contained in this podcast and on the Testing Psychologist website are intended for informational and educational purposes only. Nothing in this podcast or on the website is intended to be a substitute for professional psychological, psychiatric, or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please note that no doctor-patient relationship is formed here, and similarly, no supervisory or consultative relationship is formed between the host or guests of this podcast and listeners of this podcast. If you need the qualified advice of any mental health practitioner or medical provider, please seek one in your area. Similarly, if you need supervision on clinical matters, please find a supervisor with an expertise that fits your needs.